Hello everyone, it's me, Clayson. I just got finished watching The Midnight Sky, the new Netflix film starring and directed by George Clooney, also starring Felicity Jones, and based on the novel by Lily Brooks Dalton. Now, The Midnight Sky is certainly an ambitious film as it attempts to tell a story involving sci-fi and the end of humanity on Earth and humanity's traveling to distant planets in order to find another home somewhere else. But The Midnight Sky ultimately fails due to its pacing issues and the fact that a lot of the scenes of the film that are the most effective are just practically taken whole cloth from other better sci-fi films, particularly Gravity and Ad Astra, and it just feels like the film has nothing original or fresh here, outside of some good performances by George Clooney, Felicity Jones, and the rest of the cast. But let's get to the story, shall we? The story focuses on an ill astronomer named Augustine who finds a little girl in the 2040s after a crisis ends up affecting Earth and making Earth practically uninhabitable. But there are several astronauts that are headed back to Earth after an expedition, and George Clooney, as well as this little girl that he names Iris, they have to trek through the Arctic and find a comm station to warn the astronauts not to come to Earth, as they could essentially be the last hope for humanity. But that's all I'll say about the story without spoiling anything. Now, while the story does have a good premise at the onset, a lot of the film does end up being pretty dull, mainly due to the fact that Augustine's story with Iris is not only not very interesting, but you kind of know where everything's going to go as soon as Augustine meets Iris. You can practically tell the twist that the movie's going for practically from the start. I never read the book, so I don't know if the twist is as predictable there, but man, I could tell everything that was going to happen even before it did. And it's very, and even in the scenes involving Sully, the captain of the astronomers, played by Felicity Jones, who's a great actress. Unfortunately, she just doesn't have anything to work with here, and I honestly was wishing I was watching Rogue One instead, because at least then that was a story that I couldn't see what was coming half the time. Here, Felicity Jones mainly just has to reenact scenes from Ad Astra and Gravity on the space station, while with most of her other cast members who don't get a whole lot to do. Granted, there are some humorous scenes here and there, like one of the astronauts ends up playing what I can only describe as future Connect while on the ship, and some of the crew members do sing Sweet Caroline at one point, which was a decent scene, along with some pretty visuals of the spaceship that definitely do tell me that there was clearly money and effort put into this film. It's just a shame that most of it was spent on a story that was not only a slow burn, but was rather dull and pretty predictable. Especially since if you've seen Gravity, if you've seen Ad Astra, or if you've seen most sci-fi films with this premise, you probably know every single plot point that's going to come in. And the film is acting like a lot of these plot points are happening for the first time. It's not that classically borrowing from films is so bad. It's just that the borrowing from these films is so obvious and so enraptured with how they're used that you'd swear that these people had either never seen Gravity or Ad Astra before, or assume the audience has never seen them before. And yeah, it also just doesn't help that while the acting is great throughout, the writing itself doesn't really support it. I give George Clooney credit that he has to carry a lot of the film's scenes just based on his own acting alone, and he does a decent job. It's just clearly this wasn't the story that was meant for him, or Felicity Jones, or anyone else in the cast. Granted, it's not horrible, but I do think it's disappointing. If you have nothing else to watch, try it, I guess. If not, then it's probably for the best that Midnight Sky gets a 5 out of 10. See you next time.